What if I told you that the English shaping today's global headlines didn't come from London or New York? What if the world's fastest rising newsroom dialect is coming from a country most people never expected? Stay with me, because the story of how Filipino English quietly infiltrated international media might change the way you hear the news forever. It started as an ordinary morning for millions of viewers around the world. The BBC's flagship morning show was bustling with the usual energy, cameras whirring, producers shouting instructions through headsets, and the bright studio lights gleaming across the polished floor. On that particular day, the program had invited a guest from the Philippines, a young linguist named Isabella Cruz. Isabella was no ordinary guest. She specialized in studying how English evolved in Asian countries, particularly in the Philippines, a nation where English was widely spoken, yet often judged by outsiders as different. The show began smoothly. The BBC reporter, a tall, confident British man named James Whitaker, greeted Isabella with his customary polite smile. Joining us today from Manila is Isabella Cruz, a linguist who studies the way English has evolved in Southeast Asia. "Good morning, Isabella," he said. Isabella, composed and calm, returned the greeting. "Good morning, sir. It's a pleasure to be here." But the moment her words left her lips, James raised his subtle eyebrow, his expression betraying a trace of skepticism. The way he said it, his tone, was slightly mocking. "I must say, Isabella," he remarked, leaning in slightly, "your English is quite interesting." The word interesting hung in the air. To any casual listener, it might have sounded neutral, but anyone familiar with British understatement knew better here. Interesting was hardly a compliment. The live studio audience let out a soft, polite chuckle, and the camera subtly cut to a shot of the producers in the control room, whose faces revealed a momentary flash of concern. Live television, after all, allowed no do-overs. Isabella, however, did not flinch. She smiled gently and replied, "Thank you, sir. I have studied English since I was a child. It's one of our national languages." Her tone was calm, even warm, but there was a quiet firmness beneath her words. James leaned back in his chair, feigning casual amusement. "Oh yes, I've heard that. But tell me, do Filipinos speak English every day? I mean, real English. Or just a Filipino version of it?" The sharpness of his question was palpable. It carried the weight of condescension, the subtle assumption that Filipino English was somehow inferior or second class. The control room went silent, everyone acutely aware of the tone, yet powerless to intervene. Isabella's response was immediate and composed. "Well," she said, her voice calm but unwavering, "English in the Philippines is not just a version. It's part of who we are. Many Filipinos learn English even before they start school. We use it in universities, in government, in business, and in daily life. You could say we live in English and Filipino at the same time." James chuckled, though it lacked genuine warmth. "That's cute, but surely it's not the same as native English, is it? I mean, your pronunciation, your expressions, they're different." The word different was heavy with implication, almost as if he was saying wrong. Isabella's calm smile did not waver. Instead, she asked, "May I ask, sir, what you mean by real English? Because from where I stand, there isn't just one English. There's British English, American English, Australian English, Indian English, Nigerian English. Wouldn't you agree?" The studio went quiet. James cleared his throat, struggling to find words. "Well, yes, but the BBC uses the standard form," he replied hesitantly. Isabella tilted her head slightly, maintaining eye contact. "And who decided what standard is?" she asked. "Was it the British Empire?" The audience gasped ever so slightly, sensing the boldness of her response. James attempted to laugh it off, but the laughter felt forced, like a mask trying to cover embarrassment. "You're quite bold, Isabella," he said, attempting to regain control. Isabella only smiled, unbothered. "The funny thing about language," she continued, "is that it evolves. British English itself borrowed words from French, Latin, and even Hindi. Filipino English has evolved to fit our culture and reality. It doesn't make it less valid, it makes it ours." James attempted to reassert authority, leaning slightly forward. "But you do agree that the Queen's English is the gold standard of proper English?" Isabella shook her head gently. "Actually, sir, many young British people don't even speak like the Queen anymore. Most of your viewers probably don't use that kind of English at all." A ripple of laughter ran through the studio audience. James forced a smile, clearly caught off guard. Isabella seized the moment to expand her argument. "In the Philippines, English isn't just for academics or elites. Taxi drivers, street vendors, and farmers can all speak it in their own way. That's the beauty of it. It connects people from all walks of life. We may pronounce things differently, but we understand each other perfectly. Isn't that what language is for?" The chat section of the BBC live stream instantly filled with comments. Viewers from around the world praised Isabella's calmness and intelligence. Clips of the interview began circulating on social media with captions such as "Filipino pride" and "We speak English with confidence, not apology." Yet James was not ready to concede. "So you're saying Filipino English should be treated as its own dialect?" Isabella's response was firm, almost poetic. "More than that, sir. It's living proof of how English has become global. You can't call it wrong just because it doesn't sound British. That would be like saying British English is wrong because it doesn't sound like American English." James blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. Isabella's argument was both precise and elegantly simple. Language belongs to those who use it. And with over 100 million Filipinos speaking English daily, she asserted, it was not a mistake. It was a movement. The audience erupted into applause. James shuffled his notes, clearly flustered. "Well, that's quite an argument. You make it sound like English is no longer owned by the English." Isabella nodded. "It never was. It belongs to everyone who uses it to express themselves." The camera zoomed in on her face, calm, intelligent, confident. In that instant, viewers everywhere felt the power of a single voice that spoke truth with grace. The lesson was subtle but profound. Authority does not always reside in tradition or accent. It often resides in clarity, knowledge, and poise. By the time James attempted to change the topic, it was already too late. Isabella had captured the world's attention. Later that day, clips of the interview went viral across platforms TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. Millions shared the video, praising Isabella's poise, wit, and intelligence. Comments poured in not only from Filipinos, but from audiences across Africa, India, the Caribbean, and beyond. "She's right. Language evolves, and this is why we love Filipinos. Polite, but powerful," said one of the comments. What followed shocked even seasoned media observers. The BBC's official Twitter account issued a statement. "We celebrate diversity in language. Today's conversation with Isabella Cruz reminds us that English belongs to all who speak it." James himself appeared on air the next day to offer a public apology. "I've learned something valuable," he said. "English is a bridge, not a wall. I was wrong to underestimate how beautifully Filipinos use it." The apology spread almost as quickly as the original clip. Isabella, meanwhile, became an overnight sensation. Universities invited her to speak about linguistic diversity. Messages flooded in from people around the globe thanking her for defending the idea that English could be spoken in many ways and still be correct. Weeks later, she returned to the BBC, not as a guest to be questioned, but as a special commentator. This time, James greeted her with genuine respect. "Welcome back, Isabella. It's an honor to have you." "Thank you, sir," she replied, smiling as always. This time, the tone in the studio was different, warm, equal, and full of admiration. The conversation turned from mockery to understanding, growth, and respect. James admitted on air that he had re-watched their previous interview several times. "I realized," he said, "you didn't just defend Filipino English. You reminded us what communication is truly about. Connection." Isabella nodded. "Exactly. Language isn't about who sounds more proper. It's about who makes people feel understood. And Filipinos have mastered that." The applause that followed was different this time. It was deeper, more heartfelt. Back home in the Philippines, cafes, offices, and classrooms replayed the segment. Teachers used it as a lesson in humility, intelligence, and cultural pride. Young Filipinos who had once felt insecure about their accents began to feel pride. Speaking English with a Filipino accent was no longer a weakness. It was a mark of identity, global reach, and adaptability. A tweet summed it up perfectly. "We may not sound British, but our English speaks from the heart." It garnered over 1 million likes. Isabella's story became a symbol of confidence for non-native English speakers everywhere. She often said in interviews, "Never let anyone tell you your English is wrong just because it sounds different. The goal of language is to connect, not to compete." Her words spread across continents, translated into multiple languages, cited in essays, used as teaching material, and referenced by English teachers in the UK to demonstrate the global evolution of English. Months later, Isabella delivered a TED Talk titled "The English That Belongs to Everyone." The hall was packed, and millions tuned in online. She opened by recalling that fateful BBC interview. "That day, I learned that being mocked can be an opportunity if you respond with truth and grace." She paused, letting the words sink in. And maybe that's what being Filipino is all about. We don't fight with anger. We fight with brilliance and kindness. The audience rose to give her a standing ovation. James, sitting in the front row, was the first to stand and clap. Backstage, he approached her. "Isabella, you've changed the way I see English and the world." She smiled softly. "That's what language is supposed to do, sir. It's supposed to change how we see each other." The story of Isabella and the BBC reporter became a modern legend, a lesson in humility, knowledge, and respect. People continued sharing the video as a reminder that respect matters more than accent, and that knowledge spoken with humility can silence arrogance. Years later, whenever someone mocked a Filipino for their English, someone else would inevitably reply, "Careful. Remember what happened to that BBC reporter?" A single live interview, which began with mockery, turned into a powerful lesson for the world. You don't need a British accent to speak English with intelligence. You need confidence, respect, and a voice that speaks truth. Language does not belong to the few who invented it. It belongs to the many who keep it alive. On that day, live on air, the BBQ, and indeed the whole world, finally understood. In a world where language is often used to divide, Isabella Cruz reminded us that it can also unite. She showed millions that respect transcends accent, that intelligence speaks louder than mockery, and that confidence rooted in humility can change hearts across continents. So the next time someone doubts the way you speak, remember Isabella's story. Stand with grace, speak with clarity, and let your voice be heard. Because language belongs to all of us, and every word you speak carries the power to connect, to inspire, and to transform. If this story moved you, leave your thoughts in the comments. Share it with friends and family and subscribe for more heartwarming stories of courage, brilliance, and the triumph of respect over prejudice.